What's up, Penn State fans? It's the December 17th edition of BWI Live. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. It's virtual Pinstripe Bowl Media Day, so we're running a little bit behind our usual Wednesday schedule to bring you the latest on the Nittany Lions. Heard from Traver Pena and also Ethan Grunkemeyer on this Wednesday morning as Penn State now sits roughly a week and change away from its final game of the 2025 season. T. Frank, I'll start with this and then we'll get into the particulars of it. But I was struck listening to both Pena and Ethan Grunkemeyer talk this morning about how they're balancing the same thing that everyone from fans watching or listening to this show to us, to everyone in the Lash building is handling, which is trying to focus on this 2025 Pinstripe Bowl while realizing that there is a lot going on behind the scenes and publicly, as we'll get into with some new staff news here in just a little bit, that's about the 2026 season. It is an interesting dynamic. Traver Pena's actually been through this before at Syracuse, so he had some interesting perspective, but a lot of people, us included, new territory. I mean, it was a little bit different back in the changeover 2011 and 2012. So interesting times, to say the least, but Penn State seems to be in a pretty good place internally as they march forward to this matchup with Clemson.
Yeah, and the kind of we'll start with Traver Pena just because there were some interesting thoughts there, and then we're going to get into Ethan Grunkemeyer and play you some of his clips, some of his comments, because he's obviously a very important person within this transition. But basically, Traver Pena is saying, like, there's two separate staffs working in parallel, and they've done a good job of like not stepping over each other, but like also for him, doesn't really matter. Like those guys, like he met with Matt Campbell and he said he had a conversation with him, but really like he's just focused on the bowl game and playing and kind of finishing his career. But for everybody else, like this is a very interesting time to be there because you don't know where you stand with the new staff and they don't know where you stand with them. And I think we get into that a little bit here with Ethan Grunkemeyer in some of his comments from just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so before we wrap up with Pena and move on to Grunk, I do think it's worth pointing out that, as you can probably imagine, the obvious, Traver Pena was one of the first attendee at Penn State's Pinstripe Bowl Virtual Media Day, which tells you that he's playing in the Pinstripe Bowl, and I think that's notable in an age of guys who have 1 year of eligibility and are going to the NFL no matter what, typically opt out. So his words were that he felt like he couldn't pass up this opportunity to play one more game at the college level, to play one more time with this Penn State football team in 2025. And so, we've learned of some opt-outs to this point. We have not learned of all of them. I feel pretty confident about that. But until guys put word out there or we see a practice, which is not currently on the schedule to do, it's tough to get a full grasp on who exactly will be sitting out. But we know Pena's not one of them. So he will play his final game at Penn State in his only season at Penn State against the Tigers. And I just think, again, it'll get glossed over today, and probably rightly so. But I think it's worth pointing out, T. Frank, in an era where certainly we talk a lot more about guys deciding not to play in these kind of games than guys deciding to play in them.
Yeah, and I think that there's an interesting conversation about some of the seniors here, especially those receivers. Like, what is their NFL future? Yeah. And is this one of the last times they're going to get to play organized football? Like, I think it's going to get much harder for them to see a field in the future. And so if you're not a guy who has locked in evaluation and or draft status, then it really becomes about personal preference, desire, and some of those other things that aren't calculations. Like, I think we all sit outside here, and I am very guilty of this, of trying to do the calculations for somebody else's risk management, and not taking into account or not really understanding who they are. And it's just, this is a very tricky time of year to try and get into the mind of somebody else and their decisions to or to not play in a bowl game. Even, like guys that are opting out of this but playing in the Senior Bowl. Like, there's different reasons for doing different things. And for Traver Pena, like, clearly he wants to play football. And I think he can, be on an NFL roster in the future. I don't know that he's, I don't think he's necessarily a starter. I don't think the physical side of things for him is going to be something that teams are lining up to draft. So if you only have a few more snaps in your football career as a starter, then I get it. I get why you want to keep playing football.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So we will see him on the field. We'll see who else suits up for the Nittany Lions in that conversation of veteran guys who could opt out. We already know a few won't play. Zeki Wheatley will not play. Vegiwani will not play. Nick Singleton, of course, is not going to play. Zane Durant has already opted out. And we know Elliott Washington's headed to the transfer portal. So Chad says here, I know there are a bunch of shiny new quarterbacks in the transfer portal. First of all, good morning to everyone in the chat that are watching live, and good afternoon or whatever it may be to those of you listening on the replay. But appreciate everyone's patience this morning as we work through a late notice on this Penn State press conference this morning, and then also some technical difficulties on my end and my inability to navigate my Bluetooth controls. So thank you all for that.
That's why mine are plugged in. I'm everything is wired. It still doesn't help. Like a new thing, and by the way, like one of the things. Hold on,
all right.
Okay, now I'm on. Yep, now I'm on the right side. Like if people on the podcast have no idea, but like host is always on the left side of the screen. It was messing me up, and I know everyone else is feeling the same way. That's where we are this morning. Of like, oh, we haven't really checked every box. And Greg, I want to absolve you of your technical issues because our platform is like going through puberty. And like they've created all these great changes and you know, they've added a bunch of things that I do like. But one of the things I don't like is that randomly my audio just cuts out in the middle of the show at some point. And it's like, it's on my end. It happens randomly. Sometimes I think I know what's going on, but then I just have to leave and come back and we're good, which is not great for, I don't know, being live on the internet where you can't have interruptions like that. But neither here nor there. Let's talk about Grunkemeyer. Let's talk about what he said today because I thought it was very interesting. And quickly, while I've got my filibuster here, like the video, subscribe because we are over 20,000 subscribers. That's great news. Thank you. Want to acknowledge the milestone, but also immediately flips over in my head to, hey, let's get to 25,000. Let's see how quickly we can do that. So, let's get some more subscribers. Just a bunch of, like, half of the people that watch these shows, more than half of these people that watch these shows are new subscribers. So, what we do here is we talk about football. That's about it. And if you like that, probably want to subscribe to this channel. Greg, take it away. Sorry, I got all up and got us confused again here to start the show.
No worries, buddy. Thank you all for helping us get to that 20,000 subscribers milestone. And for those of you who are pushing us towards a new one, we appreciate you as well. Ethan Grunkemeyer will play in the Pinstripe Bowl for Penn State. His 7th start as a Nittany Lion coming up against Clemson on December 27th at noon on ABC. T. Frank, he's one of the more interesting guys, I think, on this Penn State roster for both fans and for Matt Campbell and his new staff, and for college coaches at other programs. So he's put some good things on tape over the last 6 weeks. He has put some growing moments, I guess you could say, on tape over the last 6 weeks. And so there's a lot for everyone to figure out, Ethan Grunkemeyer included, about what his future is. So let's start, though, before we get into all that, with his initial impressions of new Penn State head coach Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell said on Josh Pate's show, and I think he probably said it here on the BWI channel when he was here. You can find that replay here on the YouTube channel. But, you know, Matt Campbell has been like this for years, and every head coach is like this, adamant that the head coach and the quarterback must be in lockstep. So you got to get that feeling with Ethan Grunkemeyer, and they both have to maybe have that to see where things go in 26. So it starts with first impressions. It always does. Here's what Ethan Grunkemeyer's was of Matt Campbell.
Yeah, you know, I've met with him a couple times now, and since recruiting, I've always had a really good impression on him. I know, you know, the culture he's built at Iowa State, and I really like that from recruiting. And I think, you know, it'll carry over here really well. So just a really good impression. I like how he handles, you know, the program, and you know, I like what he's about as a coach and as a person.
So that's Ethan Grunkemeyer, courtesy of the Yankees audio and video there on Matt Campbell. Yeah, it's important to note that this is not a cold introduction, right? These two do have familiarity from the recruiting days. He later said in this news conference, T. Frank, that basically Iowa State got a quarterback before he was able to commit to Iowa State. I don't know if it was going to anyway, but it didn't really matter because they picked up a quarterback before he did, which pretty much ended his you know, possibilities of joining Matt Campbell and the Cyclones. He ends up at Penn State, of course. But certainly I think, T. Frank, it helps that these two have an established relationship to at least be able to have these open conversations. It feels to me in a world where you're trying to find as much absolutes as you can, and there's not a ton of them at this time of year when it relates to the portal, not portal, roster construction, things like that. All you can rely on is someone's word, and I think that past relationship certainly can only help in this matter for both sides.
Yeah, and it's a interesting situation because I believe, I'm just double checking this quickly, that it was indeed, he's the class of 2023, correct? See,
That sounds right,
or
offhand.
24,
24.
24.
Freshman, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to double check because they got J.J. Cole in 2023, and I wanted to make sure I got the right quarterback, and it wasn't, which is why I double checked that. Yeah, they got Connor Moberly in 2024, who, remember at the time, so he committed, as he said, early in the process. Grunkemeyer was a 3-star quarterback that was kind of like not well known, and then suddenly he gets an Elite 11 invite after he gets a Penn State offer. He comes here to State College. He gets an Elite 11 finalist, and then does well at the Elite 11 finals. Obviously he didn't win it, but a guy who kind of blew up late in his recruiting process, which I should say, like, does not preclude Matt Campbell from offering a guy or not offering a guy, right? Like, they definitely go off their analysis and their evaluations over star recruits, in recruiting. But it's just interesting. I think it was interesting the way that he framed it of they got a quarterback early and my recruitment dragged on. The details of that are interesting of like, was he less interested? Were they less interested? And did they just pull the trigger? How did that kind of impression end? But I do think it is important, as you mentioned, to say there was a positive relationship there, that they liked him enough to recruit him and have him part of the conversation all the way back as what would have been in 2023, right, during his recruiting process.
Right. So enough of an established baseline there, I think, with these two to at least be able to have the open conversations they're going to have to. Next up on the list here, I guess let's go with this first. Grunkemeyer basically asked for his thoughts on the system, and obviously he's still getting a feel for it. But he was recruited by Iowa State, and Taylor Mauser was there at the time. So he at least has whatever pitch they were giving him about his fit in this offense. Will it be the same at Penn State as it was at Iowa State? We'll obviously have to wait and see. But Ethan Grunkemeyer talks about that and what he thinks about this new system is coming to Penn State.
Yeah, I think I mesh well with their offense. Being able to distribute the ball to their playmakers on the edge, and then obviously they use their tight ends well. I think that's one of our strengths is getting the ball to the tight end. And I think I'm meshing well, meeting with the OC and him obviously on the offense. I like a lot of the stuff they do, and they do a really good job. So really excited about that.
So Taylor Mauser, new Penn State offense coordinator. T. Frank, your just initial thoughts on what he had to say about that. Obviously, he is trying to wrap his head around how he could look in that scheme at Penn State potentially compared to how he once viewed it as a high school quarterback who had never started one college football game, let alone 6, under the direction of Andy Kotelnicki and co.
Yeah, as a passer, he fits really well. Quick decision-making, the ability to deliver the ball into tight windows, the confidence to pull the trigger. Those are the things I've seen of Rocco Becht and some of the other quarterbacks that I've tried to get to know in kind of a speed run here from Iowa State. And these are just kind of surface level observations, not necessarily like the DNA of the quarterback, right? And like there's all those kind of off the film things that you have to understand. The only thing where I don't think he fits necessarily exceptionally well is the running element, because they do ask their quarterbacks to run and pick up, critical situations. I think that we saw this past year, his instincts as a runner are either rusty or not great. There were times where he's trying to cut back too many times and trying to be too elusive rather than just get the first down. He's not immobile, but I would not say he's a plus runner. And we've seen like some of these recruits and Rocco Becht, I would say, is like the evaluation I gave him is like, it's just so frustrating if you're the other team, because how is this 6'1" quarterback getting the first down on 3rd and 4th down? His conversion rate on 3rd and 4th down as a runner or a scrambler is incredibly high, especially 4th down, but physically not imposing, not like a tackle breaking phenom, but he just gets the yards you need. And Grunk didn't necessarily do that all the time, and I think there's some coaching that can go into that, but also physical development. Like, that's an older quarterback versus Grunk, who is in his second season, so that may just be a lag in his physical development than manifesting on the field. But yeah, I think overall it makes sense. He was recruited by Iowa State. There's some fundamental things that really fit, to me, between Grunkemeyer and this offense. So people who want him to stay, I think it makes sense. Like, there is an absolute fit here between Penn State, new coaching staff, and Ethan Grunkemeyer. It's, as we'll get to next, it's everything else that's going to determine whether or not that's a thing.
Yeah, so the final video clip we'll play here this morning is getting to the obvious point of this conversation, and that's, does Ethan Grunkemeyer, number one, he was asked a lot of questions about his future, and I thought he handled it very well. There's a lot of uncertainty all over the place, all over the map, all over the board for him, for Penn State, for others, and so it's hard to talk in absolutes, but at the end of the day, Matt Campbell and his staff are going to have to decide if they think Ethan Grunkemeyer is the starting quarterback for this team, or do they want to go get someone to compete with him? I think it should go without saying that they're going to have to add a quarterback, at least one, no matter what the outcome is for Grunkemeyer. Yep. I think numbers are just going to dictate that, so that's number one. But then number two, if you're Grunkemeyer, how do you manage the idea of that reality, in all likelihood, plus the idea of you just started 6 games, you're about to start your 7th. Are you willing to be a part of a competition? Are you okay with maybe having somebody like a Rocco Becht, who has 1 year of eligibility left? I'm not saying he is coming. He's not even in the portal yet, but I think we can all connect the dots and say that there's a chance that
what, 90% of the coaching staff is here. What? Right. Maybe the quarterback comes?
Right.
Do my Home Alone face for the holiday season.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, that begs the question of, would he be okay either at Penn State or elsewhere, if that ended up being the case, possibly sitting for a year before taking over a program full time? And here's what he had to say about that.
I think that's definitely the talks. You got to have, if those situations were to come up. I think it's hard to say right now. But the goal is obviously, find the best situation possible. That's kind of what my agents are, helping me out with, and my parents as well, just finding the best situation for me, and then just going from there.
So interesting thoughts there, obviously, between his parents, his agent, himself, the Penn State coaching staff, others. He's going to have a lot to consider, and it'll be interesting to see what that final decision ends up meaning for his 2026 future.
I think it's interesting. He mentioned agents twice when talking about these situations, and he didn't say agent; he said agents. So, like, this is a real dynamic. I think that there is a certain amount. I don't want to read too much into this, but considering all your options requires knowing what all your options are. And it's funny, somebody asked him about, like, hey, have you been tampered with in the transfer portal? Have the teams been reaching out? It's like, well, no, but if you've got multiple agents, they have no rules about who they're allowed to, not allowed to talk to, as far as I understand. And again, if his parents are part of this conversation as well, like these back channel things, like that's how all of this happens anyway. So no, like Ethan hasn't talked to the coach at X or Y school, but I'm certain he understands of what's available for him out there. And this is what we were talking about in the show yesterday. We spent a lot of time talking about Ethan Grunkemeyer and Rocco Becht. If those two both have interest in being the starter at Penn State, what that can mean. And I think he made it pretty clear that if agents are involved, like there's a negotiation, like there's a price involved, there is conditions potentially of like what he's looking for. So everyone wants Grunkemeyer to stay in the chat. Everyone's happy with the winning that the team did down the stretch, and they're happy with this upside of a young quarterback who feels like he's on the rise versus an unknown that you haven't really watched. I don't think it's just that Grunk stays. Like, as you mentioned, they got to get another body on the roster no matter what. So it's not, I think he's also weighing his options of like, maybe he wants to leave Penn State no matter what. Like it doesn't sound like that, but like I imagine there's a leverage feel here for Ethan Grunkemeyer of like, okay, if I want to stay, if that's the reality of I'm going to sit behind a guy for one more year, like maybe there's a financial burden you have to bear for me to be here. Those are all the things that we don't know, and I'm not trying to say those are realities, but they are potentialities of what the situation is.
It's going to be a fascinating next few weeks for this Penn State football program. The Nittany Lions have had just 2 players declare their intent to enter the transfer portal before the Pinstripe Bowl, one of which is Elliott Washington, of course. The other is Joey Schlaffer, who did so earlier during the regular season. So more coming on that front. And I think it goes without saying that it's time to get into the staff conversation. 2 new hires became official that were expected and reported by Nate Bauer over the weekend. Noah Pauley is the new receivers coach at Penn State, 2024 footballscoop.com receivers coach of the year. Brings with him a great history of both recruiting and developing wide receivers, which many of you should be thrilled about. And then the other one is Jake Waters, who those of you who are longtime followers of Penn State football recruiting, remember that Bill O'Brien tried to recruit him to Penn State back in the 2012 season before Jake ended up at Kansas State, ended up on Matt Campbell's Iowa State staff, obviously has held a couple different roles, and now he will finally end up in State College a decade and change later as the quarterback's coach. So T. Frank, 2 expected moves now done. Obviously 2 guys, it goes without saying, who are going to have massive decisions to make when it comes to scouting the transfer portal and helping to set this depth chart on offense for the 2026 season.
I just think it's very interesting how young this offensive coaching staff is. Taylor Mauser is like my age. Noah Pauley and Jake Waters are both in their early 30s, and they've only been coaching at Iowa State since 2023 and 2024. Now, Jake Waters did have a graduate assistant stint in 2017 at Iowa State, but this is not like a long track record. These are ascending coaches on the way up instead of, I think, what maybe some Penn State fans were expecting, especially out of offensive coordinator, with like a big old tome that you slam on the desk and say, this is my resume. Here's all the receivers I've recruited. Here's all the quarterbacks I put in the NFL. Here's all of the first places I've ever had at producing offense in college football. And, I said the same thing about James Franklin, that it's not just the on-field talent. I thought he did, for the most part, a good job of evaluating off-field talent, coaching talent as well. On the whole, it did not end well, obviously. And I don't want to make it sound like it was great the whole time and he was excellent, all these things. Fit was also a big problem. But at the same time, like his coaching staff he brought over from Vanderbilt, like a lot of those guys became head coaches. A lot of those guys got opportunities elsewhere and performed well here at Penn State. And they were desired out there in the coaching community. We'll have to see, like, Matt Campbell has a lot of these young up-and-coming guys, and what they become in their future is still to be determined. And I think that's really interesting dynamic about this particular class. Now, youth and energy, and, like, I don't know, like, I'm 30, I'm in my mid-30s. I don't know that I have the same youth and energy I did in my mid-20s, but apparently more than when you're in your 50s. I'm just going by referential by everybody all the older people who tell me, like, oh, you're so young. But, like, that's what you got here, and I find that interesting.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I think that you see that kind of this Penn State staff could be that across the board. You know, you look at the youth of what you mentioned on the offensive side of things that we know about. Deion Broomfield, the secondaries coach and former Iowa State star, is not terribly far removed from his playing days. And if you keep Deion Barnes and Dan Connor, 2 younger guys that could be a part of the defensive staff moving forward as well, that's what Matt Campbell, who is not by no means an older guy himself, could be working with in year one. So, yeah, the staff build-out's interesting to me. The reaction to it probably more so than the reality of it, because I think that a lot of people are looking at this and maybe a little bit surprised that the guy who has had staffers dating back to his time at Toledo is going to bring some of the staffers that have been with him either that long or as recently, or started with him at Iowa State a decade ago. That they're shocked that he's going to bring those people with him, and I don't really understand how that could be the case.
Yeah. I appreciate you brought this up here. Don't forget to like and subscribe for everyone watching. And, of course, if you're listening on the podcast, please help us grow that side of things. We've got a lot of people that listen regularly. We'd like to get a lot more as well. It is my job to do these, so I apologize for beating you over the head with this. But just a reminder here, as we get into the holiday season, we're going to have a lot of ups and downs in terms of when the show is. So the best way to know when we've posted a show, when we go live or when we have audio or video, is to subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and enable notifications. Subscribe to our podcast feed. Tell your friends about it. 5-star review, because next week we're having just one live show I believe that's going to be on Tuesday. I don't know. I don't know why I said that. It's going to be on Tuesday. We're going to have one live show. And then after that, for the week of New Year's Eve, we will have a recap show. Greg and I will go live, I believe, on Tuesday maybe. And then we're going to have a special show on Friday for the transfer portal opening. And we're going to discuss some of the things. So it'll be Friday, January 2nd, but we'll be off New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So we still got a bunch of shows coming up at the end of the month. But there's going to be just some strangeness in the schedule. So appreciate everyone who's a regular, and want you guys to know like there's going to be a little bit of a disruption here in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and there'll probably be more of that, T. Frank, as we get into the January portion of the off season. Obviously, we're still in the 2025 season, but there's a lot going on and will be going on in January. So if you don't have that subscribe button clicked, if you don't have the opportunity to know when shows are coming, you might miss out. And, they're always here and available for replay. But there's also the reality that at any time we could be going live to talk about any number of topics. So hit that subscribe
button. New defensive coordinator, right?
Yeah.
Still out there.
Put the notifications on. You'll be good to go. Let's just touch on that real quick in terms of what's left for this staff to figure out. Matt Campbell obviously has a lot of hires to make. Off-field staffers, recruiting department staffers. Who's he going to keep? Who's he going to replace? Who is going to leave voluntarily after the bowl game? So there's a lot to figure out. On paper, at this very second in time, there are openings, obviously, at defensive coordinator. That's number one.
Yep.
That is the role that needs to be filled. And until that happens, a lot of other things are not going to be set in stone. So that is where, I guess we'll take this conversation next. There's no new news to report as of 11 a.m. Eastern time on December 17th in terms of Matt Campbell's pursuit of a defensive coordinator to replace Jim Knowles. And it's not a blank canvas internally, obviously, but if you're trying to project externally where he's going to go with this, could be just about anywhere. His Iowa State defensive coordinator, John Heacock, is a guy who has been doing it very well for a number of seasons in Iowa State and elsewhere before his time in Ames. And so he is a candidate, but it's interesting. He was one of the first reported guys to be coming to Penn State, always with the caveat of, he might not call plays. He might serve in some other capacity. So, we'll see what exactly that could mean for his future in coaching, not at Penn State yet. And then from there, T. Frank, I just think the options are pretty much endless. There's not been a lot of buzz, speculation, otherwise coming out about his choice for defensive coordinator. And I know that's the one thing people probably care about most, and there's just not a whole lot to say about it at this moment in time.
Yeah, they're going to stick with kind of the principles of the Penn State defense over the last several years. I think that's the main takeaway I've got in terms of like what to look for and what the who the defense coordinator might be, but beyond that of like who it actually is, who are the names in the running, like it's wide open. And I do think that part of this conversation, there's some games coming up in the next couple of days that will help determine who's available, who's not available, who's interested. And there's just again, it's fluid sort of thing on that side of the ball. But I don't know. I don't know what the John Heacock situation is going to be in terms of like whether he could still be in consideration for that defense coordinator spot. It'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out, and then the perception of if it becomes like basically the Iowa State staff just takes over except for a few key positions. I think there is a sentiment of disappointment around the Penn State fan community, given like they were told they're going to get a bunch of new toys with a bunch of money to spend. And then it's like, well, these are just the guys from Iowa State, which is also why you were hiring Matt Campbell. So like, I think it's an interesting dynamic. Like that's, I guess, where I'm leading this is to. It's a very interesting dynamic of what the plan might be, because we see James Franklin hit the ground running relatively quickly at Penn State. If you consider 2016, they were in the Big Ten championship game because he brought over his entire staff and they were able to just seamlessly start working. And so how much do you want to go outside beyond the current staff? I think it's an interesting dynamic where defensive coordinator seems to be the biggest one of maybe there's an outside person coming in and joining the program.
Yeah, I would say that looks definitely like a possibility. At the very least, it's something that Matt Campbell's going to have to consider here moving forward. So we'll keep you posted on the latest updates on both the defensive coordinator search and everything else related to Penn State's personnel tracking decisions at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You can check out our join page over there at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for our best and latest subscription offers. So do that today. Don't miss out as we get ready for both the Pinstripe Bowl and the postseason. And T. Frank, if you want to go to the World Cup, I don't know if you're a World Cup guy. I'm a World Cup guy. I don't think you're going to be going to that version of football, though. But if you want to go to the World Cup, it's coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. 48 teams will be playing across across North America, and that's why Game Time app is such a lifesaver, because it gives advantage back to fans with tickets to all the matchups you care about. You can track the price drops in real time, get alerts when seats open up. This isn't just for the World Cup, folks. It's for Penn State hockey at Beaver Stadium. It's for your favorite NFL and NBA and NHL teams, and it's all backed by the Game Time guarantee. So you want to check out gametime.co for your ticket needs. Everything you could possibly need and want from a ticket provider, whether it's knowing how much you're going to pay at checkout, whether it's knowing what the seat from your view, the view from your seat rather, is going to look like, and if you're looking for a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, so on and so forth, you're going to find it all with gametime.co. So take the guesswork out of buying college football, World Cup, NFL, NBA, NHL tickets, concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code ON3. That's the letters ON and the number 3 for $20 off, T. Frank. And you can check out whatever it is you guys want to see this holiday season, what you want to get a gift for somebody. If you're still looking this holiday season, you can do it all with gametime.co. So appreciate them being part of the show. In terms of the Pinstripe Bowl, T. Frank, I'm just scrolling our little breakdown here, and we're going to get to best bets, but I'm going to find them first. And then we will get into some more Pinstripe Bowl talk. But we are now less than 2 weeks away from this game. BetMGM has Penn State as a 3.5-point favorite. Dabo Sweeney, we're going to get into the Penn State side of this in a second, but I figured we could take a moment to talk some Clemson side of it. Says that they're going to be without 27 players. And I don't know how much you've read up on this, but it sounds like a shock and awe kind of a number at first.
Yeah.
And who they'll be without is impactful. But a lot of the guys were already out in terms of either injury-wise or had planned to hit the portal before the end of the regular season. So some big-name guys will not be playing, but I think you're going to see – I guess what I'm getting at here, T. Frank, is I think you're going to see that 27 number thrown around a lot, and I don't know if it's as indicative of this game and what you should expect from Clemson as maybe it seems like it should be.
Yeah, I guess I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to Clemson other than to know they were basically the ACC Penn State, where they were also considered a top team and then fell off a cliff. So what's the advantage for Penn State here, I guess, where they're the team that's favorite 10 days out? I don't know. Like, how did their season go? And I have a hard time, and I guess the thing I'm trying to get to, Greg, I'm trying to ask you is, are bowl games with all this information and this, I don't want to say misinformation, but not knowing who's going to play, who's not going to play, as a soft opening to the best bets conversation, is there a lot of opportunity here? Because I genuinely don't know what to expect out of Clemson. Like, I think I just stumbled through saying, like, who the hell knows anything about Clemson at this point? I've been watching high school receivers and safeties in Nebraska, and so like, what does Clemson bring to the table where they're the underdog, and where is Penn State? Because they're in a very similar situation. We just don't know the names for Penn State as of yet.
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I mean, I think that somebody asked over on the Lions Den message board, which if you are a BWI subscriber, you get premium access to, why would anyone bet on college bowl games with all the things you don't know? And I 100% agree. Like, if you're going to do it, to me, you wait. Well, obviously the college football playoff games are different, but if otherwise you wait until the game actually starts and you get into the live markets and go from there. I mean, as part of our BetMGM best bets next week, we will hit on the Penn State Clemson game with a pregame pick because that's what we do before every Penn State game. But just in general, I think it's really hard to mess around with some of these bowl games. Like today, I think, like last night, Troy, Jacksonville State. Like, I don't know I'm not sure if you're really wanting to mess around with that game anyway, but certainly in the current environment, I don't know why you would.
Right.
Today's games, Old Dominion is getting 3 against South Florida, according to BetMGM, in the 5 p.m. Staff DNA Cure Bowl. Like, I don't know. You would have to spend a lot of time digging to see where those two teams are at, respectively, to their rosters and their stars and things like that. And it's tough. Like tomorrow night, Missouri State and Arkansas State in the Xbox Bowl. Like, I just say, good luck to you finding a lot out about who's playing in that
Xbox
game
Bowl.
prior to
That
the
part
starts.
is new to me too. Like that, it's the Xbox Bowl. I did not know that was a thing.
So they were a last-minute addition to the bowl sponsorship list. I forget exactly who dropped out, how that all worked out, but certainly the Xbox Bowl is new. You didn't miss anything. That is definitely new.
Okay.
Okay. And so yeah. So we're gonna ignore those games in this week's edition of Best Bets rather from BetMGM. We're gonna focus on the college football playoff games coming up this weekend right after this. Best Bets time presented by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3, that's capital O, capital N3. When you sign up, make this college football season one for the history books and make it legendary, T. Frank. As we wind down the college football season, the college football playoff starts this weekend. Obviously, many of you and those of us who did preseason predictions thought Penn State would be at least playing this weekend and or waiting to find out which opponent it would get next weekend, or the following weekend, rather, coming out of this opening round of games. Obviously not the case. So for Penn State, they are sitting at home. A number of teams are getting ready to play. We're going to focus best bets on those teams this week. All right, so I'm looking at the playoff games this week. I'll run them all down just for the sake of doing so. You have Oklahoma +1 at home against Alabama. You have Texas A&M -3 against Miami. You have Ole Miss laying 17.5 against Tulane. And you have Oregon laying 20.5 against James Madison. So the last two games there are on Saturday. The last three are on Saturday. The first one is on Friday. Let's start with that first one, T. Frank. Alabama, Oklahoma. People in the chat here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube page have spent a lot of time in the last month pondering whether Kalen DeBoer might be Penn State's next head coach. People in the Wolverine chat over on the Michigan YouTube page are now doing the same, wondering if he will be the next Michigan head coach. And the Bama Online folks certainly talking about him as the current and future Alabama head coach. So this game fascinates me for a number of reasons. Number one, the idea that so many fan bases over the last month have looked at Kalen DeBoer and were hopeful that he would lose a quote-unquote big game so that way he would be available faster to possibly be their next head coach.
Yeah, rooting for the opponents of Alabama down the stretch. At this point, it's December 17th, and none of that happened. I also just generally have a huge disdain for what I've seen from Brent Venables' offense. Defensively, Oklahoma's great, and he's a great defensive coordinator. But there is this trap sometimes with great defensive coordinators who that's their thing, and then they just hate offense. They want it to be as safe as possible so they can win the game, and it makes you I don't know if they've gotten better. I think they've gotten better talent. I don't know if they've gotten better on offense. And truly, I don't know because I haven't watched them a whole lot. But last time Oklahoma came up, everyone went, oof, that offense. I'm like, okay, so I don't need to go check in on that again.
Right.
So yeah, like I'm in favor of Alabama in this game for that reason and that reason alone.
Yeah, so I am really interested to see how this one plays out, but my eye is on the total. I'm going to go with under 40.5 points in this game for some of what you just said. And if I was forced to pick the winner of this game, I think I'd probably take Alabama, but I just don't know. Like, it feels like a toss-up. I'm with you in the sense of I don't really trust Oklahoma's offense. I don't necessarily trust Alabama's all that much either. So give me the under. It's low, like 40.5. There's a lot of ways for that to quickly go wrong, but when I was scrolling these odds earlier, it just jumped off the page of me. So best bet number one heading into the college football playoff first round is Alabama and Oklahoma under 40.5 as it currently stands on BetMGM. Let's go to Saturday now. 3 games, as we mentioned: Miami, Texas A&M, Tulane, Ole Miss, and James Madison, Oregon. Texas A&M is laying 3 against Miami. The total in that game is 49.5. Really fascinating matchup. You have Mike Elko, who was another coach that Penn State fans were hoping might come to State College at some point, should he have ended his time as the head coach of the Aggies sooner. That obviously did not end up being the case. As we sit here right now, looking at BetMGM's number, obviously a ton of people are laying the 3 points with Texas A&M. Split on the total, though, interestingly enough. Do you have any thoughts on either of these two teams, T. Frank, before I dive in?
Nope. Go for it.
Nope. The answer is no.
I don't know anything about them.
No. At that. So you have the ACC team in Miami, who obviously, did not play for the ACC title and yet still made the playoffs regardless. And there's obviously a glut of debate over that. I'm going to take the 3 with the Hurricanes. I think that this game is a field goal game through and through, so give me the 3 points. I would love a hook. Like, I'm going to wait for it and hope it comes. Right now, Miami is +3, -105, which gives me, I guess, a tiny sliver of hope that a 3.5 will appear. I highly doubt it, though. So at this moment, I am stuck with 3. If I want to move that anywhere on BetMGM, I could do it to +3.5 to -125. Not ready to do that yet. Something I might consider, though, come Saturday. So either way, I like Miami to keep this within a field goal. Do they win the game outright? We'll just have to wait and see. But Brad in the chat is not in agreement. He has it A&M 28, Miami 17. We'll see. Should be a good game. Obviously, I think a lot of people, for better or worse, are just assuming the other 2 games will be poor to watch or uncompetitive to watch. You have Ole Miss at 17.5. You have Oregon at 20.5. And, I think most people are just under the impression that those games will be blowouts. So hopefully the 2 before them give us something good to consume. And if either of or both of the other 2 games come through for us, great. But certainly not counting on it. So last best bet of the weekend, focusing on these college football playoff games, T. Frank, I think I'm going to go with Oregon -20.5. So that means I need them to beat James Madison by 3 touchdowns. I don't love it. It feels kind of chalky to me, and it feels kind of almost too easy, like almost a situation where it just feels a little bit too easy. And you know what? I'm going to change it. I'm going to change my last best bet. I will knock that one off the board to number 4, and I'm going to go with Tulane +17.5 instead. To keep it within two touchdowns plus a field goal against Ole Miss. Like, I know that there's the offensive coaching staff is at Ole Miss, and they're other than Lane Kiffin, and that's great. Just such a weird last few weeks for that program. And I think they win the game. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not picking Tulane outright. And obviously John Summerall, the head coach there, is doing double duty with Florida and with Tulane. So, and Tulane, in their only Power 4 game this year, did not fare all that well. But all that said, I'm going to take them to stay inside the number 17.5. It's not, it's a hold your nose bet without question. But obviously, I'll probably regret this and wish I took Oregon -20.5. But that's where we are, T. Frank. Those are this week's best bets. You have any final thoughts on that? You want to get any hot takes in quick on the Group of 5 versus Power 4 first-round playoff matchups?
No. The final team that would have made the college football playoff wasn't going to win the college football playoff. Like, I don't care. allow a little bit of fun and a little bit of chaos. Like, everyone is so caught up in their own politics and their own feelings and their own motivations, and we just we bicker about everything. And I just let James Madison be there, and let's have some fun. Football's fun. That's my hot take, is everyone's hot takes are stupid, and I'm tired of them, and I don't want to participate. Not great for a YouTube show, though. Not great for our engagement, but hopefully put some good out there in the world. Not everything has to be.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
Tremendously disappointing news. First, I cut off T. Frank. Sorry about that, buddy. And second,
I was rambling. It's fine.
Once I hit that disclaimer from BetMGM, I flipped over to check my email inbox, and I saw I had something from the Big Ten Network promoting a live show. I was really hoping it was going to be a release of the 2026 schedule. It is not. It is on-site coverage of, obviously, the college football playoff. So no news on that yet. I know that's been a hot topic over on the Blue Illustrated Lions Den message board. I'm not sure how much it's come up here. Everyone wants to know when that schedule's coming out, T. Frank, because most people want to start booking travel, especially with the Lions going to Seattle to take on Washington. There's just no indication that's close to coming out at this point in time. I don't think I need to state the obvious. If it doesn't come out this week, it's very hard-pressed to see the Big Ten doing it, during the holidays and before, between Christmas and New Year's. So it feels to me like you have a couple more days for it to come out. And if not, we'll be waiting into January to find out the Penn State 2026 schedule. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk Pinstripe Bowl. Let's talk 2025 Penn State football. The final days of the 2025 Penn State football season are upon us. Some housekeeping notes. Penn State is practicing in State College right now and has been since last week. They will leave for New York on Monday, December 22nd. Obviously, the game is that coming Saturday, so they will spend the holidays in New York. Plenty of guys seem excited about that. And so, Penn State and Clemson, I think, gets there the same day. Both will have starters not in the lineup. Both will have older guys who I think, using to steal a phrase from baseball, pitch count situation is very likely. Yeah. And so that's going to put a lot of younger guys in focus. And I think at this point, T. Frank, it's time for us to take a look at who some of them are that we want to see as it relates to 2026. It's just so weird to phrase this conversation the right way, because you want to get a read on these guys one way or the other. But if you're Matt Campbell and his staff, obviously you're going to use the tape to your advantage no matter what happens. But also, if a guy has a breakout performance, especially depending on his age, he might become a lot more expensive after 4 hours in New York to keep around in 26 than he was before kickoff on noon on ABC on December 27th. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, and that's the funny part is I think the most valuable part of this is actually the practice. It's one thing to have those live reps, and you do want to have that as part of the evaluation. But if you're Matt Campbell, so I don't want to make it out to be that this game is going to decide whether players stay or go, and whether Matt Campbell wants them or not, because a lot of these guys have a full. I'm sure James Franklin didn't burn the film of the practice footage from the past year on his way out the door. Right. So I'm fairly certain there's evidence that this new coaching staff can review along with coaches who are here that are going to stay to get an idea of what these players can do before they hit the field, and some of the young players. For us and for me, I love this opportunity before the spring game to get to see some of these guys that we've talked about and we've seen in high school and seen their development in blips, but we haven't really gotten to see a sample size of them playing in a football game. So I think for us, the viewing public, and for the scouting departments of other programs, you're absolutely right. To me, the audition is going to be the last couple of weeks, the last week or so, this week and then next week, of how do you practice with Matt Campbell in the building. He gets to see your practice habits. He gets to see your personality on the football field, and along with the rest of those coaches who, I think it's a great opportunity for them to see kind of a firsthand experience of what these young players are, who they can be in his system. And so for people who are like didn't care about them making the bowl game, this is why it's important. Because now you have all these extra practices to have that extra information, fresh new data about these guys. And so like before we get into the players we want to see on the field, I think that's the setup to me. I think is the most important is like you can do a lot of that before you even see the field next Saturday. And so like that's what I'm interested in behind the scenes, but there are definitely guys I want to see a bigger role for this year. Or in this game.
I'll ask you a dumb question that puts you on the spot that you may not have an answer for. But
love it.
With everything you just said, does that make it problematic that Penn State does not have a defensive coordinator here yet? Or is he going to be able to rebound with the film to be okay? That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'll answer first since I put you on the spot. But like, yes, I think it'd be nice to have that person here in the flesh to do all the things you just mentioned these guys that are here are doing. But hey, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. There's so much film practice-wise before this week, after this week, so on and so forth, that I think it'll be okay. But I do think after everything you said, it's a fair question that some people might ask, so I thought we should address it. But I don't think it's a huge deal. Probably not ideal, if you're on a scale.
I think it's a small deal.
100. Yeah.
I was going to say it's a rare steak, but that's a good steak, like it's a medium low on the deal scale because like Derek Hoosier and Matt Campbell, like the guys at the top of the organization who are going to do the talent evaluation and do the conversations about who we're interested in retaining and those things are happening right now. Like they are happening this week. It would be nice to have a defense coordinator there so there's more clarity for some of those guys, but they know what they want their plan to be. It's who's going to run said plan. And then from there, it's, I think, more of a, hey, does everyone fit together? Which is the small part that you don't know with if you're going to be hiring an outside candidate to come in and be the defensive coordinator. So it's a small deal. And then the defensive coordinator who does come in, and that's why I think like it's very important that they've got some of their guys coming in, especially in the secondary with Deion Broomfield, to get a sense of some of these young players and do that on that side of the ball. And, we're kind of thinking Penn State, it's not official yet, but Penn State's going to retain Deion Barnes and Dan Connor. We think those things are likely. Then there's even less of a transition. Like there's no transition for some of those positions. And, it's the top piece that fits in. The capstone piece is always important. But if you got almost everything else built out, you can kind of paint the picture of what the guy is going to look like and then go from there. Kind of reverse engineer what the defense coordinator is going to be, if that makes sense.
Yep, it absolutely does. All right, T. Frank, let's get into some of these names of players we want to see on the field in either practice setting, game setting, whatever it may be over the final 10 days of the 2025 Penn State football season. Give me two to start here, maybe one on offense, one on defense, and then I will pick two off my list.
I want to go with the offensive line first because I just have a hard time thinking all of these seniors are going to play. We know Venga Ioane. I believe we know Venga Ioane isn't going to play. I have a hard time keeping up with all these details, which is why Greg is on the show. So I want to see some of these tackles. Like, is Drew Shelton going to be on a pitch count? Is Nolan Rucci going to be on a pitch count, or are they not playing? Like, those guys haven't really made an indication. So I think it's more likely we're going to see a lot of young offensive linemen. And to me, this is critical of how are they going to keep some of those guys, and who are the guys they're interested in keeping? Egan Boyer, Garrett Sexton, and that class of tackles I think are critical to the upcoming year. We talked about this on the show last week. I wrote about this. There aren't a lot of guys coming over from Iowa State that make sense, at least in terms of guys that had film last year, and you feel like, okay, they could step into the role. So I think Sexton and Boyer are two guys. Owen Alicini, the third of those tackles that I think, if we're talking about specifically that position, you want to see those guys play, and you want to see them play well, but maybe not play too much of what we just talked about, right? Of like, you want that internal evaluation to stay internal. So you're really only fighting with Florida and with Virginia Tech over these guys because of the relationship with Phil Trautwein at Florida and James Franklin at Virginia Tech. It's going to be a battle. Like, those guys playing, I want to see them play. I want to see, kind of where they've progressed. So those are the three. And then on defense, I gotta go with my guy Xavier Gilliam. I genuinely enjoy watching him play football. especially like, and I know that this is kind of a selfish thing, but like on the coach's film, you get to see more of like what the defensive line does. Same with the offensive line and his reps. So I just want to describe this. His best reps are dominant, where he is putting a guy 2 yards in the backfield, just straight up shoving a 300-pound man backwards against his will. And so I'd like to see just more evidence of where is he on his progression, because I think he got banged up this year and still was playing through that, because, everyone gets banged up. But, he clearly got banged up in a couple of games. He got injured and then stayed in the game and came back with more armor, like on his arms and his shoulders. So has the rest helped him? What is, his trajectory for the offseason? Again, the duality of I want to see it. Maybe they don't want everybody else to see it, because I think he's going to be a guy that commands dollars on the open market, given, the need for defensive tackles who are athletic and strong. And he's, to me, he's the most interesting of the guys that have played this year that Penn State should retain that aren't the flashy names. Like everyone's going to say Chaz Coleman, right?
Right, exactly. And I think, of course, when you look at that defensive side of the ball in this conversation, I think everyone's going to lean towards the obvious, the Darius Dixons, the Yaman Kamajus, the Chaz Colemans.
Yeah.
To me, Amir Joseph is a name that really jumps off the roster when I'm looking at young guys, because I don't think it's unfair to say that he was talented enough to have burned his red shirt if Penn State felt it was in his best interest to do so. And it never got in the spot, injuries or otherwise, that it had to do that. But that doesn't mean he wasn't a guy who made major strides during his first season in State College. So I'm curious with what I will assume will be more reps. Like somebody has to take Elliott Washington's reps. I'm skeptical of how much A.J. Harris is going to play, despite how he has not said anything yet about his Pinstripe Bowl plans. But to me, I would assume there's going to be reps there to be had for him and for Dixon. So curious to see what he can do in a role, T. Frank, where Penn State does not have to worry about limiting his snap count due to eligibility issues, because, as we should point out, that no longer matters. Once you get to the postseason, that 4-game counter goes out the window. You can play as many postseason games as you want. Penn State only gets one this year, but Joseph is a guy that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I want to go to the chat here because there was a really great comment that I wanted to get to on my list. I've got like 30 guys on this list that I'm interested in looking for. And Z-Man says, which young running back is going to get the most carries? Genuinely, I don't know, like from week to week or from day to day, who was the third running back for Penn State. I think Corey Smith is the guy that emerged as the most consistent and the most consistently available throughout the year, but it was such a mystery, and it was such a unimportant drama to the narrative of the season, but I think was also a very interesting thing to monitor week to week about what those guys' status were and whether we talked about them needing them this year from a depth perspective, and then that just never materialized. So to me, I think the running back situation, when you have this turnover where you've got 2 guys leaving, and I wouldn't expect a whole lot of Katron Allen, if any whatsoever. Like, I don't think he should play in this game for his sake. When you've got a vacuum there, it doesn't make sense for every player on the roster to leave, because everyone could say oh, they're all gone. Well, the coaches also who were in the decision-making process of having them not be a part of the game plan this year are also gone. There's just a hard reset at running back overall. Right. And so this is something we talked about on the show of who makes sense to join Penn State from Iowa State. If you bring in both of those veteran backs, then you're essentially telling these guys to get lost. And so, again, I think there's an opportunity for one of these young guys to show themselves as a valuable piece that, hey, they have a lot of talent in this room. Who's going to be a guy that sticks around? Because at a certain point, the opportunity at Penn State is the same value as the opportunity in the portal, because there will be opportunity here for a running back or two in 2026.
Yes, absolutely. From the chat, a lot of people talking about, unsurprisingly, LeVar Arrington II. Look, Penn State made a choice after James Franklin left to burn his red shirt. So if he was ready for linebacker reps and Penn State thought he should be taking them, he could have done that in the regular season. Whether or not maybe with a month of bowl practice or 2 weeks, whatever it is, 3 weeks, could he find himself in a bigger role depending on who's available, who's not, so on and so forth. Time will tell. But unlike some of these other guys we're talking about where Penn State did not either have the opportunity to burn their red shirt or, were on the border, I think that this case is obviously different where Penn State burned his red shirt simply to play special teams. Yeah. And so if they wanted to put him more at linebacker, they could have at this point or at any point during the end of the regular season. Beyond that, T. Frank, a couple other ones that come to mind as we close out the show here. I think that the first one that jumps out to me as we wrap things up here, obviously the receiver position is one that's going to be watched closely going beyond Kobe Howard. Does anyone else break into the field there? I
guess I'm less interested in the receiver position because, first off, Trevor Pena is going to play, clearly. Right. And then... we kind of know what we know what the story was there. And I guess you're right. If they were to add some of those younger guys that weren't a part of the conversation, but is it then Anthony Ivy? Who are the young guys? And I guess that's the intrigue. I guess I'm just less interested because there's both more known and more unknown there because it's just the answer is Kobe Howard. Can a guy like Matt Otten, who was clearly not ready to play this year just from a raw perspective. And then, some of those true freshmen, can they play, in this game? Would that be something I don't know, to drop that far down the depth chart makes a lot of sense. And then Peter Gonzalez was out for most of the year. He's returning for the postseason. Is he ready and available? Are they going to say okay, now you can go out there and play after a couple of weeks? So I guess it is interesting, but there's so many unknowns that I'm less interested because I think the answer is going to be what we saw during the regular season. Kobe Howard, and maybe we get to Tysier Denmark.
Okay, interesting. Well, we will wait and see. I think more than anything else, we can guarantee ourselves that this game will feature some names that we didn't see coming, doing some things that maybe we didn't expect them to do. Could be positive, could be negative, but to the point, I'll let you get one final thought in. But to the point that you're making there, I think there are position groups where you look at it more in depth and say to yourself, okay, and we can continue this conversation next week as well, but say to yourself, okay, this spot is more likely for Penn State to maybe force the issue with some younger guys or less experienced guys, and there's others where that may not be the case.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was trying to say is I'm probably less interested in the receiver depth just because I don't believe we're going to see the guys I'm most interested in seeing. Right. This one, Bizzle asked this earlier in the day, and I wanted to make sure we got to this before the end of the show. He said, can we find another quarterback or set of QBs that can match or exceed the running skills of Michael Robinson, Trace McSorley, and Darryl Clark? That's more in the vein of what they do at Iowa State. That's more of what they want to do, so you will see more of that. I think that it's hard to get to Darryl Clark and Michael Robinson, in terms of being a fullback sort of runner. And being physical. But I think that you have an opportunity for them to be a more athletic quarterback. The thing I don't want is I don't want to go too far away from passing the football. And passing the football, throwing the football, that's, again, with this staff, it's the priority. But they do want both. And they aren't willing to sacrifice. Where I think Penn State recently went, okay, we don't need as much athleticism as long as we get the quarterback part of it. So you're going to see more running, you're going to see more athleticism, but not straight up option football. That's not what they do.
Right. Well, we'll see what Andy Kotelnicki decides to do. Answering our question quick from the chat. Somebody asked, was he the offensive coordinator basically for the Pinstripe Bowl? Yes, that is the case. Anthony Poindexter is going to call the defense. So, T. Frank, any final thoughts, buddy? I got to go listen to Tom Allen here in a few minutes, but I have a few minutes. So, curious to see what he has to say. This will be our first chance to talk to him since leaving Penn State. I realize that many Penn State fans probably didn't care what he had to say when he left, and they probably don't care a year later even more. But it is a unique dynamic of Ethan Grunkemeyer brought this up today, a unique dynamic of you have a guy who is very, very familiar with all of the personnel, not just the starters, but the guys he dealt with on scout team and other parts of practice. So it is an interesting dynamic, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I had forgotten that. In all of the topsy-turvy drama, I forgot, oh yeah, by the way, Tom Allen's in this game. Just so many different things going on for Penn State football. So that's where I'm going to leave it. That's it. Just crazy how many things are going on.
All right. Well, plenty to follow at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So go check us out there, from the transfer portal to the staff makeup to everything that comes with trying to finish out the 2025 season and get ready for 2026. We'll have you covered. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. T. Frank is back on Thursday with the guys for the Blue White Illustrated recruiting show. T. Frank, you want to run off next week's schedule one more time before we get out of here?
Yeah, so Christmas week will just be on Tuesday, and then I think we're going to do Monday, Tuesday of the week after, and then Friday. So we're going to have, we're going to try and do 3 shows the week of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. That's my hope. It might be 2, but we're definitely going to do, more shows the week of New Year's Eve, including one on Friday that is a transfer portal special, where we're going to go live on Friday and talk about the portal and all the things that we know or don't know at that point.
All right. Well, if you hit the like and subscribe buttons, you will know when we're live talking about Penn State football. So for Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. We'll catch you next time on BWI Live.